Bonjour and welcome back to the Wicked Webs We Weave podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Mckern, and tonight we discover who is the witch of the French Opera House. This historical story and folklore brings much to the imagination and chills, surely to bring in your Halloween season. It's back into mon ami, and thank you again for joining me in the Wicked Webs We Weave. According to lore, a young woman named Marguerite was an opera singer who, upon discovering her lover's affair, killed herself after placing a curse on him. The French Opera House, designed by the renowned architect James Collard Jr., was constructed in 1859 with its stunning Baroque design, intricate fresco, and a grand chandelier that glittered like a constellation. It was a symbol of artistic excellence and elegance. The theater's early years were marked by a succession of triumphant performances and was the optimal place for entertainment in the 1860s. A young woman named Marguerite made quite a splash on the scene as a performer at the French Opera House. She was no great singer, but was quite beautiful and thus made a success of herself as she aged. However, her careered up quickly, as she had little other than licks to fall back on. Just as her hopes for a singing career vanished, tragedy struck. Her husband was killed by yellow fever. She put her days of performing behind her and opened a bakery with the meager inheritance from her husband's death. It's said that quite successful, so much so that she was able to hire another baker. He arrived, and she found him a very attractive young man. The chef quickly became her lover, and she kept him in high style. Soon, though, she began to feel he was drawing away from her. One night, she decided to follow him, and she discovered he had a new lover. It was a young woman closer to his age, who he was keeping in a second-floor love nest at St. Anne and Royal Street. Marguerite waited beneath the apartment's balcony and heard the young lovers talking. The young woman begged him to marry her, to which he replied that he would rid himself of that old hag. Soon enough, Marguerite waited until the apartment grew quiet. She crept upstairs, tightly closed the windows, and suffocated the lovers by turning on the gas in the apartment's fireplace. She left, but not before slipping a note of apology for what she had done and was about to do between the bricks of the fireplace. While she had been cheated, she was still in love with the young chef. She cheerfully dragged her way to the French Opera House, and there she hung herself from the rafters with a bit of rope. From the date, in the late 1870s, people serving haunting, which they called Witch of the French Opera House, a mournful spirit dressed only in tattered cloth. She was seen dragging along the streets between the opera house and the apartment where she had killed the young lovers. She was often heard wailing and screaming so loudly as to awaken the slumbering residents of the French Quarter. The opera house burned in 1919, but this spirit is reported almost nightly, trespassing between the two locations. In the 1950s, a workman renovating the former apartment of the lovers found her note of apology, and upon reading it, tossed it in the fireplace. The witch of the opera house was heard letting out one last otherworldly shriek and was never seen or heard from again. It is believed fire destroyed the two things holding her to this world, the notes and the opera house, and finally freed her spirit. Curiously, though, while Marguerite herself seems to have moved on, young lovers at the corner of St. Anne and Royal Street still often report the smell of natural gas, though there are no gas lamps or fixtures visible today at that intersection. Haunted New Orleans. The Opera House has since been replaced with forgettable bars and forgettable faces. It has lost its grandeur and romance, its passion and glory. Show tunes no longer linger in the streets, and costume performers don't line up across the stage for their final bows. What was once a place of classical music and luxury is now a place of neon lights and lounges filled with smoke. Now we venture into some stories of witchcraft in New Orleans. There is no shortage of supernatural, mystical, paranormal, voodoo, and what could be called spiritually eccentric in New Orleans. The city's history is rich in diversity and challenges, all of which are reflected in the tapestry of the culture. When you begin to look at voodoo and traditional European witchcraft, the similarities can be astounding, even though their foundations are worlds apart. There are witches in New Orleans, all kinds of witches. American Horror Story has made sure that the Crescent City is up there next to Salem, Massachusetts when it comes to witchery history and casting spells. But the girls owning their craft at Miss Robenshaw's Witch Academy and American Horror Story aren't exactly accurate. Marie Laveau is undoubtedly the most famous witch to have called New Orleans home. To be more accurate, Miss Laveau was known as the Voodoo Queen. It comes to details in different worlds with similar meanings, tweaks and twists to rituals and practices. Even though the roots and canons apart, the intention through worship and service are the same. Witches have historically and culturally gotten a bad rap. Until recently, we're beginning to see a resurgence of folks coming out of the broom closet, so to speak. The age of Aquarius was the last time we really saw a rise in the Stoic arts. Blame it on Anton LaVey's church or Stevie Nicks' Gold Dust Woman. Either way, 1968 seeded more than the Summer of Love, and it wasn't just the West Coast exploring the religious freedoms. New Orleans is about to expand the city's witchy reputation publicly, and not only acknowledging voodoo as a religious practice, but officially recognizing witchcraft. Marion Toup set the witch wheels in motion in 1972. The state of Louisiana chartered Mary and gave her a certificate of the Religious Order of Witchcraft, officially recognizing witchcraft as a religion. The ordained high priestess was now the leader of an incorporated organized religion with non-profit status. America's witches had come a long way. In 1910, not that long before the Religious Order of Witchcraft got their state-issued practice rights, a woman was arrested and convicted of witchcraft. She was caught in a neighbor's barn supposedly casting spells on a farmer's cows. It's safe to assume that the witchy woman was not practicing her incantations in or near New Orleans. She would not have had clients that lined up for her services in the bayou, proving her spells achieved their goals. Bottom of the Cup Tea Room opened their doors in the French Quarter in 1929. Back then, and for most of the 1900s, it was illegal to take money for fortune-telling, so they would charge for tea and biscuits. Your future was on the house. It's rumored that politicians from all over the state would stop into Bottom Cup Tea Room, a little mystical guidance before election season. It's no wonder Maria Aneda Toup founded her in Meridian, Mississippi, to the Crescent City. She knew she'd be welcome in the home of voodoo, tea leaves, and soothsayers. White magic, black magic, green witch, swamp witch. The list is long and diverse, but none are more witchy than the other New Orleans, who has a lovely menagerie of witches, all welcome to worship, practice, cast, heal, and read their mystical heart's desire. Priestess Mary Anita Toup knew she would find her place in the arms of the Big Easy. Priestess Mary was a practicing white witch, white meaning that she didn't practice black magic or the dark arts, though there are articles written by alleged members of the inner circle that could claim different. In 1971, she opened the Witch's Workshop on 521 St. Philip Street in the French Quarter. She sold candles, sprays, oils, and even a few things that were a bit more specific, like bats' hearts, which are said to be great for those who do gamble. In a 1972 interview, the journalist Horace Sutton, she explained that it's important to sell people the whole dried bat, as they can be confident it's the real thing and not some old chicken heart. In the footsteps of Marie Laveau, Priestess Mary held ceremonies in the shore of Lake Pontchartrain. The city of New Orleans granted her a permit to conduct rituals and ceremonies in City Park, much like her predecessor. Her predecessor, Marie Laveau, did 100 years earlier, and she was extremely particular who could join her coven. She wasn't interested in drug-abusing hippies that had found their way to an alternative lifestyle. She told the Appaloosa's Daily World, there are higher caliber witches, and those were the ones who were a part of her order. To many, Marianita II is the most powerful witch to have practiced in New Orleans. She educated herself in the many religions of the world, interpreting and applying scripture from religious texts, including the Bible, into her studies and practice. Her Western ceremonial magic was steeped in tradition, as well as heavily influenced by Aleister Crowley's Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. But at the core of her beliefs and craft, she promoted actively being your best through knowledge, and harnessing your power for good, even if her means of good could be perceived on the fringe. In 1977, a mummified severed head was found in a trash bin of her abandoned occult shop. When she was questioned about the head, Mary explained that she was a practitioner of Egyptian magic and a witch. She threw the head away because she could feel it had bad vibrations. Obviously, Mary wasn't concerned with consequences. Perhaps she knew there would be none. Marianita II passed away in September of 1981. Current members of New Orleans' religious order of witchcraft say she was taken at the young age of 53 by a brain tumor. Famous New Orleans musician and the night tripper himself, Dr. John, claims in his autobiography that Mary died from her enemies poisoning her. Like a true witch, she left this world with a little mystery, a little curiosity, and a lot of reverence. If you're planning to visit New Orleans and hoping for a little witchery, you can find quite a few shops in the French Quarter, as well as peppered around the city, offering everything from the spell books, card readings, and even herb and root mixtures of incantations. Mary's old place on St. Philip currently hands a fete. There you can arrange to have your cards read, palms read, or spend time with a medium if you're hoping to communicate with the lost loved ones. And if you really want to dive into craft, New Orleans hosts an annual witchcraft conference, Hexfest, that happens in August every year. Local and visiting witches offer workshops, discussions, and classes on their practices and rituals, and there are vendors from and around the selling witchy goods and other services. The history of witchcraft in New Orleans is rich and diverse, just like the city itself. Whether you are interested in voodoo, Alexandrian witchcraft, modern pagan practices, theistic, Satanism, voodoo, Masonic, or Western ceremonial magic, hoodoo, you can find a coven and resources in the city. And if you're not interested in conjuring or casting, it's still a good idea to thank your ancestors and light a white candle when you're feeling grateful. Thank you again for joining me in another episode of the Wicked Webs We Weave podcast. This has been a very fun episode to record as we are approaching the autumn season. Please like and subscribe and share. And until we see each other again, au revoir.